The GOP springs into action. We know they're taking over the House of Representatives and they are coming in hot. We're going to take a look at several different letters that went out already, right? They're not in charge yet, but Jim Jordan and a number of House of Representative GOP members are already sending these letters out quickly. They're going to, and we're going to go through every one of these, more or less the same type of letters, but we just want to see the different agencies that are involved and what they're asking for. The Republicans have promised us a lot. They've said that we're going to really solve all of the Democratic inquisitions that have been taking place over the last 2 years. We're going to get the gavel. We're going to turn the tables on them, and we're going to go really find out what is happening in our government. So we're going to check in with Ron Klain. He's the White House Chief of Staff. He's Biden's right-hand guy. Christopher Wray, we're very familiar with on this show. FBI director, somebody who is very paranoid about, homegrown domestic violent extremism. Much of that comes from this guy, Merrick Garland. He runs the Department of Justice, and so they're going after him for the weaponization of the DOJ. And of course, they want to know more about Miguel Cardona, who is the Secretary of Education. He's somebody who has got a lot of power this time around. In this current administration, he's been able to find a new provision that gives him the power to waive about $400 billion of student loans out of thin air. Also has the ability to go after parents, sort of invoking the aid of the FBI to go prosecute parents who show up at parent-teacher conferences and the whole thing. All of them now subject to inquiry. And so we're going to go through each one of these letters before we take a look at the outgoing leaders in the House of Representatives, in particular, Schiff and Liz Cheney. They're going away. But before they leave, the Republicans are becoming aggressive, and let's see what they have in store for us. A letter from the GOP over to the White House Chief of Staff, Mr. Ronald Klain. He's assistant to the president and the Chief of Staff. He is the man in charge. He makes a lot of things happen in the White House. Probably everything, because Joe Biden doesn't know much about much. Congress of the United States is where this letter is coming from. You see a bunch of Congress people are signing off on this. We've got Jim Jordan, Steve Chabot, Louis Gohmert, Matt Gaetz. You see the rest of the names on here, right? There's a lot of them. And a lot of these names are going to be on all these letters that we go through. So we're not going to spend a ton of time on each one in terms of who signed it, but they're more or less the same. The Republicans write to the White House, they say. All right, Ron, as we prepare for the 118th Congress when we're in charge, punks, we write again to obtain your voluntary compliance with the outstanding requests for documents and information that we need. We appreciate your prompt attention to these outstanding matters. Okay, this is the introductory phrase. We already sent you a demand for this. Here's our second request. Over the past 21 months, Republicans say we have made several requests for information and documents concerning the Biden administration's misuse of the federal criminal and counterterrorism resources to target parents at school board meetings, the PTA terrorist parents we talked a lot about here. We reiterated and itemized these requests in our recent letter, October 17th, which is enclosed for your convenience down here. If you forgot what we sent to you, it's right down here. October 17th, they said, we're investigating the National School Board Association and what you're doing by unleashing the federal government to go after them. And they gave the whole litany there. Jim Jordan sent this letter back in October. But the federal government doesn't care. They just say, Congress, Jim Jordan, who cares? And they just keep going about their business. But Jim Jordan, he's going to be in charge soon, and so he's making sure the record is clear. He says, to date, you have ignored these requests. Please be aware that if our requests remain outstanding at the beginning of the next Congress, the committee may be forced to resort to compulsory process to obtain the material that we require. Ooh, don't you like how that sounds coming from this side? It's like we're used to getting this language from, Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson. Okay, well, the Republicans have it. And listen, I disagreed with it back then. I think this is I don't like the trajectory of any of this stuff. But I've been saying for a long time, if the Republicans don't play the same game as the Democrats, then they're going to get evaporated. Because this is an existential crisis now. The government has become so weaponized, they're raiding presidential homes. So if the Republicans just sit on their hands and, well, we're not going to do what they do to us because we're better than them. And you do that old school Republican garbage that has caused them to lose a lot of elections, they're going to lose more elections. And so if Jim Jordan and them don't do this, right, Well, then they're going to just go bye-bye. Well, good news is it looks like they're doing it. We might result to the compulsory process, which means subpoenas. And if you disagree with those subpoenas, like Steve Bannon did, or like Peter Navarro did, or like Donald Trump has done, guess what happens? Oh, maybe we refer you now over to the DOJ, Ron Klain. In addition, which would be hysterical, right? Because it would be Biden's DOJ. Now, in addition, writes the Republican Party or the GOP in the House, they say, in addition, to advance our oversight of the Biden administration's use of federal law enforcement on school boards, we also require prompt testimony from employees of the executive office of the president. We expect your unfettered cooperation, in arranging for the committee to receive testimony from these individuals. As an initial matter, we anticipate requiring testimony in hearings or transcribed interviews from the following employees in the next Congress. 4 people listed here. I don't know that you'd recognize any of them. Mary Wall, Julie Rodriguez, Catherine Pantachego, Neasley Silva. Don't know. But to avoid any unnecessary delay in receiving these testimony from these employees, we direct your staff to work with committees now on scheduling these events. They're not even in charge yet, and they're already scheduling meetings. I like it. The congressional oversight power, which is rooted in Article 1 of the Constitution, is broad and indispensable. Same type of language Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson used. This authority encompasses inquiries into the administration of existing laws, studies proposed of law, and survey defects, right? All the same, like they basically lifted this language from the J6 letters. Basically, they're probably like, hey, can you get those templates off Benny Thompson and Liz Cheney's computer? Can you send us the Word doc files? Oh, perfect. All right, well, I'll just delete a couple of these paragraphs and just kind of change this around a little bit. I think that might have happened. And surveys of defects in our societal, economic, and political purposes, right? All of the stuff that Congress is supposed to do. The Judiciary Committee is authorized to conduct oversight into these matters. And of course, we'll do that once we are in charge. And we're going to refer this stuff pursuant to the rules of House of Representatives for criminal law enforcement if we need it. Criminal law enforcement. Well, all right. There you go. And look who signed on the letter. Matt Gaetz, Louis Gohmert. We've got Jim Jordan, all in the House. All of them. Andy Biggs from Arizona, shout out, right? We've got Thomas Massey's on there. Got Chip Roy on the list. Scott Fitzgerald, Burgess Owens. All right. So you see what is going on. Now, there's more where that comes from. We've got several letters. We've got the Honorable Merrick Garland. He's next. We've got Christopher Wray. Okay. He's coming up at the FBI. We've got Secretary Miguel Cardona, all coming up. But first, we've got to check back in over with our friends at Goldco, because we know how important securing your financial savings is. If you have an IRA, 401k, or a savings account, you know as well as I do that things are scary out there. The Biden administration has already printed more money in the past 2 years than the previous 100 years combined. The national debt has hit a record $30 trillion. Inflation is the highest we've seen since 1982. It's only a matter of time before the house of cards comes crashing down. If you have a retirement savings, your money could be at serious risk. Talk to my friends at Goldco right here on the screen to see how you can protect your retirement with gold and silver before it's too late. Go to robertlikesgold.com. They'll give you $10,000 or more in free silver when you open up a qualifying account. That's over at robertlikesgold.com. Goldco is A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau. They're nice friends of the show. Thank you for supporting Goldco. All right, so we've got Christopher Wray coming up, Merrick Garland, and then Miguel Cardona. And let's see exactly what is happening with the FBI. In a letter to FBI Director Christopher Wray, dated November 18th, the new incoming GOP Congress is letting him know to be prepared. They write, "Dear Director Wray, as we prepare for the 118th Congress, we write again to obtain your voluntary compliance with the outstanding request for documents. We appreciate your prompt attention to these outstanding matters. Over the past 21 months, we've made several requests, including in a recent letter to you, November 2nd, which once again, like the other letter we saw, is enclosed for your convenience. Just reminders." Okay, here's the previous letter on November 2nd. They said, "Dear Director Wray, we've got a lot of questions for you, including why the FBI is purging your employees with disfavored viewpoints. Why do you keep kicking them out? The FBI is not immune to transparency, and you just keep getting on airplanes and flying away every time we've got tough questions for you. So how about you answer those questions. To date, Jordan and others, they say, you've ignored these requests and you haven't responded sufficiently. And if you don't, we're going to be forced to resort to compulsory process to obtain the material we require. To the FBI, subpoena his butt. In addition to advance our oversight, we require prompt testimony from FBI employees, including, here you go, number one, Christopher Wray. So why don't you give us your unfettered cooperation in arranging for the committee to receive the testimony from the FBI employees? If you don't, we'll have to go through compulsory processes. Similarly, we saw Paul Abate, Timothy Langman, Jennifer Moore. Now, we've got Stephen M. D'Antonio, or Antonio, right? I don't know how you actually pronounce his name, but he's on all sorts of documents that we read. He signs a ton of this stuff. He's a prosecutor out of the Washington field office. We've also got Elvis Chan. Remember Elvis Chan? San Francisco field office. He was the person, allegedly, who was communicating in the big tech collusion lawsuit that is being brought by Missouri Eric Schmidt. He's suing, and he's saying that Elvis Chan was the person colluding with Jen Psaki and Anthony Fauci in the White House. So the Republicans want information on all these people. So they say, to avoid unnecessary delay in receiving this testimony from these employees, why don't you direct your staff to now schedule these events? Please be advised that the testimony is in addition to periodic hearings, which we're going to convene as well. And get ready for those. Our authority is rooted in the Constitution, and if you do not comply, the Judiciary Committee is authorized to conduct oversight, and they'll refer this matter elsewhere. Again, signed by the same people, led by Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz on the first page. That is to the FBI. Let's see what they're saying to the Department of Justice. Letters from the Republicans now going to Merrick Garland. Attorney General for the United States leads the Department of Justice, dated November 18, 2022. Again, hey, Merrick, just like we sent to the FBI and to the White House, we're preparing for you too, buddy boy. And guess what? We need some more answers. We sent you a prior letter, actually 3 of them, one on October 11th, one on October 28th, and one on November 2nd. And they're all enclosed down here below. You see them all listed here. October 11th. They said, hey, DOJ, why are you prosecuting the terrorist parents that you say are terrorists who are not? They said previously, even after that, another one, October 28th. Now we're asking about the DOJ and the southern border. Why are you going to use taxpayer dollars to pay settlements to illegal aliens who violated the U.S. law? DOJ, why are you doing that? Can you answer that for us? We're investigating it. That was all sent over. FBI ignored that letter. The DOJ also ignored this letter November 2nd. They said, we are conducting oversight of the DOJ operations and your targeting of journalists now, right? This case involving Project Veritas. Why are you going after these different individual agencies? Department of Justice, answer the Judiciary Committee in the House. But no, that's not what the DOJ does. They don't care. They just said, well, we're the DOJ. We're in charge. We're running stuff here. So leave us alone. And so the Republicans are saying, well, we're coming in hot, buddy boy. So get ready. In advance of our oversight, we require testimony from the following people. 1, Attorney General Merrick Garland. And if he doesn't comply, we'll see if the Republicans use the subpoena. Deputy Attorney General, dun, dun, dun. This is the big one. Lisa Monaco. I'm pretty sure she's the person who's actually running things there at the DOJ. Every time Merrick Garland comes out with a big announcement, guess who's right by his side? Lisa Monaco. And anytime there's something that's a little bit, prickly that maybe Merrick Garland doesn't want his name on, guess who is happily signing that document and shoving it down the gullets of all of us? Lisa Monaco. Associate Attorney General and all of the others, right, for Civil Division, Antitrust Division, National Security Division, Criminal Division. And look who is on this list. Our friend Matthew G. Olson, Mr. Homegrown Domestic Violent Extremist himself. He's the individual who was sitting there with Jill Sanborn when Ted Cruz was asking them questions about Ray Epps and the FBI and all of the other feds who were invested and infested at the J6 protests. And all of them shook their heads. Oh, we don't have any idea. We don't know what you're talking about. We can't comment on any of these investigations. Meanwhile, they've got an entire fake committee that's running their own insurrection on the United States. Matthew Graves, U.S. Attorney for the DOJ, and others, right? All of the people that we're familiar with. They say to avoid unnecessary delay, why don't you start scheduling these things and we'll be happy to get them started, right? Same sort of closing, same members on this one, Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz, Chip Roy, Burgess Owens, and the others. Now, it's not just this one. There is yet a final letter from the GOP to Secretary Cardona. And you may not be familiar with him, right? This is what Merrick Garland looks like. This is what Miguel Cardona looks like. He is the Secretary of Education. He's a person who decided that he had power to just, I guess, unilaterally through the executive branch, with the stroke of a pen and executive order, waive about $400 billion of money, right? He just sort of wrote that into the budget somehow. I don't know how he did it, but he did it. And he's also responsible for some of the parent-teacher conference inquisitions taking place in your local neighborhood. So let's see what the Republicans had to say to him. They say, "Dear Secretary Cardona, we are preparing to come after your booty. We write again to obtain your voluntary compliance because you haven't cooperated previously. And over the past 21 months since Biden took over, we have reiterated our itemized requests for answers in our prior October 17th letter." Here's what they said in that letter. They wrote, "Dear Mr. Cardona, you have some reason found it necessary to use federal law enforcement authorities against parents who are at their schools. We're asking about documents pertaining to that and how it chills the First Amendment rights when you create anxiety by calling parents terrorists and by invoking FBI oversight over parent-teacher conferences," sort of saying that's kind of insane. He says that we've asked you for information about that, but, please be aware that if our requests remain outstanding at the beginning of the next Congress, our committee may be forced to resort to a compulsory process to obtain the materials we require. And we also want to talk to these people involved. People named Kimberly, Larry Bowden, and Nicholas Summons, all people who are working at the Department of Education. They say, we've got the power to do this, and we are going to do it, and we're going to do it hard and fast, so get ready for it. Signed again by Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz, and the rest of them. So all four of these letters are now making their way over to, hopefully have landed on all of these individuals' desks, and we'll see if there is any response to that, because the Republicans will be in charge soon, and we'll see if they can keep their word, right? If they are denied. Miguel Cardona doesn't send over the information. Merrick Garland denies that. Christopher Wray says, we're good. What happens? Well, the next step would be that they do just what the Democrats have done to the Republicans. In this case, they just refer it over to the DOJ. They form a committee. They say they issue a subpoena. They decline the subpoena, refer it over to the DOJ. And what's the DOJ going to do? Well, these are friendlies now, right? These aren't Steve Bannons. These aren't Peter Navarro's. This isn't Donald Trump anymore. So how are those prosecutors going to live with that double standard, right? If they had an epic meltdown because Steve Bannon ignored a J6 committee subpoena, what happens when some of these lefties ignore a GOP Judiciary Committee subpoena? Now, for all of these public figures, and I'm very certain that Jim Jordan knows this, they're all going to invoke executive privilege, right? Executive immunity. Many of the same defenses that we've talked about with Donald Trump, they're going to do the same. I'm Christopher Wray. I'm sort of immune as an executive administration official, and so I'm immune from some of these congressional subpoenas. Leave me alone. And we'll see if the Republicans, want to litigate this stuff. They should, just like the Democrats did. But the problem is, of course, is the Republicans are in a bad jurisdiction. They're operating out of the D.C. jurisdiction, which is totally in favor of the Democrats. So we'll see if it goes anywhere. But at least the letters look good. I mean, we like going through some letters here, and at least the letters feel good. Maybe that's the most of it, but hopefully not. We'll see where it goes. But we've got some reaction. Of course, we have the outgoing leaders, so-called alleged, in the House of Representatives, who are the Democrats, are on their way out. And we've been following the J6 committee show trial inquisition for some time now, asking ourselves, what's the point of this? Are they going to propose new legislation, right? They're supposed to do something at the end of this. Is it going to be an indictment of Donald Trump? Is it going to be a referral for legislation saying that, any insurrection, we find by legislative resolution that this was an insurrection led by Trump. Therefore, Trump can't run under the Fourth Amendment insurrection clause. Okay. Is that what they're going to do? Are they just going to issue a report and we're just all going to sit around and supposed to read it or something? What's the point of all this? And if the committee sunsets and the Republicans come in, are they just going to leave their files in the file drawer? Or are the Democrats just going to say, okay, here you go, Republicans. We have been doing a very thorough, very above board, purely ethical, extremely comprehensive, something representative of both sides. Here's our investigation. Here it is, just right over for you. You can pick it up. We did such a great job that you can sort of read our work and see if there's been anything problematic in it. Or are they going to take that and anything that is not highly vetted, highly narrative crafted, everything else goes in the shredder because they don't want you to see what they did? Which is it going to be? What do you think? Well, let's listen to Adam Schiff and see what he says about this. Adam Schiff, one of the pencil necks on the J6 Select Committee, is discussing what their final report is going to look like and what they might need to do to ensure its integrity.
Consensus on the report. We're very close to that now. We're close to the putting down the pen and going to print. And I think the report is going to set out in a, I hope, very comprehensive way what took place, what led to that attack, and all the circumstances around that. We're also going to be releasing the evidence, which may be the most important thing. The voluminous transcripts, the documents and emails. We want to make sure that that's put before the American people. We certainly don't want the Jim Jordans of the world to cherry pick anything not disclosed and make a false or misleading narrative out of it. So the country's going to have the evidence. They're going to have our report. And I'm enormously proud of what we've done and know I'll be proud of the final result.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. Jim Jordan has already said that he is going to, he will be the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. He is going to go through the evidence you left out. You're saying that there won't be evidence that will not be made public.
The evidence will all be made public. Now, we'll have to...
What evidence? The evidence that they've selected or all of the evidence? In other words, to use a Kamala Harris circle Venn diagram analogy, are we going to get the full circle or only a subset of the circle that they think is accurate? What is it going to be? Now, the question that I had was about what the rules said. And previously, I forgot to pull this up before we started the show, but there was a question that popped up on Twitter about this. And this is what it looked like. The question came in from Amuse on Twitter, official online safety expert, keeping you safe, says, I know safety, and says here, a question for the lawyers. Can Adam Schiff actually destroy the J6 evidence before the GOP takes control of the House? Okay, this is essentially what Adam Schiff is describing right now. Can they do this? The House Intel chairman admits they're going to scrub some of the evidence from its final report. Is that legal? Right, and this is what Adam Schiff is talking about. And so I posted this on Twitter, by the way. If you're on Twitter, shout out to you for watching there. But this is what I looked up yesterday. And remember, we've taken a look at HR 503. HR 503 is the founding document for the J6 committee. And in the document, it says that it shall be comprised of 13 members. It is not. So I've said it's illegal from the beginning. So I wrote the whole committee exists in violation of their own rules. So the rules don't matter, in other words. Okay, can they do this? Can they do that? Is it legal to dispose of evidence? If they brought out a shredder, could they just, start shredding things? And is anybody going to care? Nobody cares. The Department of Justice doesn't care. The DOJ just says, well, if you find that it's a problem, if you think that this is worthy of criminal charges, just send it over to us. We don't care. We'll prosecute it. No problem. The courts don't care about the formation of the committee. Okay, they say 13 members. Okay, well, 9's good enough. It says 5 Republicans should be on there, though. Well, 2's good enough, right? It doesn't matter. So my point is the rules don't matter. But if you look to the rules say that, yeah, they do have some redaction power, right? This is what is actually in HR 503 specifically. You see it says treatment of classified and sensitive matter. Any report that's issued by the select committee shall be issued in unclassified form, right? So we should be able to see it, but it may include a classification index or annex and a law enforcement sensitive annex or both, right? So they can issue a final report, but they can redact a ton of stuff if they want to. Now they also see here, when the select committee is terminated, upon disposition, the disposition of the records of the select committee, okay, shall become the records of the committee that is designated by the speaker. Okay, so I'm going to presume that the committee is going to wrap up. Nancy Pelosi will appoint the committee, appoint the records to another committee. But the question will be, what do they actually turn over? In other words, does the current January 6th select committee shred a bunch of their documents before they turn these materials and the records back over to the other committee? Obviously. Okay, so the rules say that essentially they can do this. There's nothing in the rules that I read through that say that they have to keep the full universe of records, right? They can go through all of the hay, get all of the needles out that they want, and then get rid of the hay and just show America all of the needles. And we say, yeah, but I mean, what about all the hay? And there's some other problems with that and over here and all this. And they say, well, you don't get to look at that because we've extracted what we need. We've provided the relevant facts to you. And we've decided what's true, what's reality, and what isn't. And they can basically do whatever they want. They've already been operating doing whatever they want anyways, because the judiciary and the executive branch has been deferential to Congress. They've just said they can just form whatever kind of committee they want. And everybody has been giving it legitimacy. So they've been operating with legitimacy. But even if they were being honest with themselves, if Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson, and you said, guys, your rules say 13 members, you have 9. You agree that that is not the same, right? That's not what your rules say. I can't imagine what they would respond to that, but I guess nobody's ever asked them that because I don't know why people don't read the documents or care. But that's the point, right? They can essentially do this. They can do whatever they want. They've been operating outside the purview of any oversight for years now. So who cares? This is back to Adam Schiff explaining.
Make sure that done and know I'll be proud of the final result.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. Jim Jordan has already said that he is going to, he will be the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. He is going to go through the evidence you left out. You're saying that there won't be evidence that will not be made public.
The evidence will all be made public. Now, we'll have to make sure that we scrub that evidence for personally identifiable information, that the evidence that we provide protects people's security. It doesn't put them at risk. So there are things that we're going to have to do along those lines. But yes, we want to put the evidence before the American people, which supports the hearings that we've done, as well as the report that we'll put out, and will be a comprehensive picture and all the circumstances around that. We're also going to be releasing the evidence, which may be the most important thing. The voluminous transcripts, the documents and emails. We want to make sure that that's put before the American people.
So he says we're going to scrub some of it. We'll see what ultimately ends up in their manila file folders, in their briefcases, their file cabinets that they turn over to the Republicans. But I'm not so optimistic that it's going to be the full universe of all the evidence. And by the way, right, it's necessarily missing, right, a huge portion of the universe of evidence, right? We know that they did interviews with Wray and we know that they sat down with some of these people. But they didn't allow for any adversarial proceedings even to take place. Okay, so real Republicans on the committee, not Liz Cheney, not Adam Kinzinger, who are the fake Republicans who are not even in the party anymore, are going to actually investigate ulterior avenues. Go after Christopher Wray and ask him, how many feds were in there? I want to know exactly how many feds, what were their names, where were they located, how long had they been undercover, what were they doing? But none of that happened, because it was not even a representative committee in the first place. Now, Pencil Neck Watermelon Head is here, and he is communicating about McCarthy. He's very upset that he may be booted off of the Intelligence Committee soon. Adam Schiff takes digs at Kevin McCarthy, the guy who's going to be in charge of the House of Representatives, very likely to take away Mr. Schiff's position on an Intelligence Committee. Of course, what happens? He blames all of the fringe elements of the Republican Party. saying that McCarthy is compromised.
As you well know, the man who was trying to be Speaker, a Republican Kevin McCarthy, says that he wants to kick you off the Intelligence Committee, the committee that you now chair, because of your handling of the Trump-Russia investigation, and specifically that you repeatedly asserted that there was direct evidence of collusion, direct collusion, which didn't materialize. What's your response to McCarthy?
Well, McCarthy apparently doesn't think it's collusion if your campaign manager is giving inside polling data and battle strategy in key states to an agent of Russian intelligence while the Russians are helping your campaign. But most Americans would call that collusion.
Okay.
McCarthy's problem is not with what I've said about Russia. McCarthy's problem is he can't get to 218 without Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar and Matt Gaetz. And so he will do whatever they ask. And right now they're asking for me to be removed from my committees, and he's willing to do it. He's willing to do anything they ask. And
you should be removed because you have no intelligence. All of your allegations about Hunter Biden, your cover-up of that story, your allegations about Trump-Russia collusion, all of it was manufactured. It was all hoaxed up. Even CNN has the stones to ask you about it. And she did it very carefully. Did you see her sort of response, kind of reading down there from the paper? You know, you sort of lied to all of us about this story here. So can you answer that?
We'll do whatever they ask. And right now they're asking for me to be removed from my committees, and he's willing to do it. He's willing to do anything they ask. And that's the problem. Kevin McCarthy has no ideology. He has no core set of beliefs. It's very hard not only to get to 218 that way, it's even more difficult to keep 218. That's his problem. So he will misrepresent my record. He'll misrepresent Derek Swalwell or Ilhan Omar, whatever he needs to do to...
Nobody's misrepresenting your record. You claimed Trump-Russia collusion wasn't proven, and it's the end of the story.
Get the votes of the QAnon caucus within his conference.
He's not the only one. The incoming oversight chair, James Comer, told Punchbowl News in an interview, "I don't believe congressional investigations have a whole lot of credibility now. I blame Adam Schiff for that.
Yeah.
But it's also both parties to blame for investigations in the past. I want to change that."
Well, we'll see if Comer's going to be right about this. Now, I've said for a long time, if the Republicans, lay down their arms first, the Democrats are not going to lay down their arms. Are you kidding me? Look what's happening around this country. They are as visceral as ever. So if the Republicans just, well, we're going to be nice this time and we're going to go through and we're just going to investigate, only the appropriate, reasonable things that most Americans want, like that might be true. I think most Americans do want this. Like, I think most Americans are sick and tired of this, to be honest, right? I know. I think it's a shame what we've seen happen with the January 6th Select Committee. It's been a travesty of justice through and through, beyond anything political. What has happened to the so-called insurrectionists, right? The presumption of innocence, due process. It is one of the most disgusting things that has happened in this country ever, right? And it's going to continue on, right? Probably just barely in the middle of it, right? They're still, the FBI is just getting new throngs of information from Google, cell phone data, and all sorts of stuff. But it's happening, right? This is the new, Committee on Un-American Activities, right? This is the new. It's a travesty that what's been happening. But if the Republicans don't do the same thing, if they don't play with the same weaponry that the Democrats are playing with, they're going to get evaporated because they're raiding presidential homes. They're calling Republicans MAGA extremist ideologues, all of them. Right? There's like not a reasonable Republican anymore unless you are a lefty. Unless you're Adam Kinzinger or Liz Cheney, you're not a reasonable Republican anymore. You're a MAGA extremist. Jim Jordan's a MAGA extremist. Kevin McCarthy, who's one of the most milquetoast conservatives, Republicans in the whole country, doesn't have a set of morals, and he's been commandeered by Matt Gaetz and all of these other people. Right? They want the Republicans gone. They want them evaporated. And I really respect James Comer. I think his work has been outstanding. We've covered a lot of it here. And I agree with him, right? Adam Schiff is responsible for a lot of this. Both parties are to blame for this. And he says, I want to change it, but we'll see.
What's your response?
Well, Comer doesn't believe in the Russian investigation. He doesn't believe in the Ukraine investigation. He doesn't believe in the investigation of January 6th.
Yeah, they're
and
all
why?
charades.
Because those are investigations of the serial abuse of power by Donald Trump. And Comer and Jordan and McCarthy will do nothing but carry Donald Trump's water. Someone, as you point out, who's sitting down for dinner with anti-Semites, who's sitting down for dinner with bigots, We won't condemn them. This is who they're making common cause with, and so they will do and they will say what they need to get along with Donald Trump.
So we know that one's coming out. They're not going to let that one go. Get used to that being inserted every other interview. Trump Kanye, Trump Fuentes, Trump all of it, right? All of it is going to be never ending. So just buckle up for that one. But all right, so we've got that one. We also have a clip here from this guy who says that he may be cooperative. We'll have to see. Schiff was responsible for sending a ton of subpoenas out as his part in the January 6th Select Committee evolved. But now that the tables have turned, now that the Republicans might be in charge of the House, Schiff, are you going to respond to their subpoenas?
If you are subpoenaed by Republicans when they take over, will you comply?
We'll have to consider the validity of the subpoena.
Oh, the validity of the subpoena. Isn't that nice? Don't you just love that? Yeah. So every single time that anybody challenged one of the subpoenas that Shifty Schiff sent over their directions, if Bannon said, no, we're going to challenge this, we're going to file a lawsuit. If Trump says we're going to file a lawsuit or challenge this, or we're not showing up, we've got executive privilege. Shifty many times said that they were undermining American democracy, that they were being disorderly in the proper administration of justice. And how dare they? How dare they question the validity of a congressional subpoena? It's automatically valid just by virtue of the fact that it came from Congress. But if it goes to Little Pencil Neck's address, he says he's going to have to consider whether or not to comply.
If you are subpoenaed by Republicans when they take over, will you comply?
We'll have to consider the validity of the subpoena.
What a joke. All right. So hopefully the Republicans say, well, we've considered the validity, and we've got a ton of precedent, by the way. You said the last time somebody ignored one of your congressional subpoenas that guess what had to happen is jail time. Bannon's going to prison for 60 days. Maybe Pencil Neck can have a nice little cell next to him. Well, we'll continue to cover that, of course, but he is not alone. Also outgoing from the United States Congress is Liz Cheney. She lost her election by 40 points because everybody in Wyoming hates her. But it's not just those brilliant people in Wyoming. It's also the people who are on the committee itself. Can't stand Liz. Washington Post reports that the January 6th panel staffers are angry at Cheney for focusing so much of the report on Trump. 15 former and current staffers expressed concerns that important findings unrelated to Trump will not become available to the American public. Oh, man. Didn't Pencil Neck just tell us that they were going to tell us everything in there? The American people are going to see everything, all of the depositions and everything that we need to make sure is available for their digestion. But according to the Washington Post, Jacqueline, Josh, and Carol, they're all telling us that no, in fact, the committee themselves are disappointed that huge swaths of information are going to be nuked from the reporting. Since Liz Cheney accepted Speaker Pelosi's offer, okay, so this didn't come from the Republicans at all. It came from Nancy to serve on the chair. She's exerted a remarkable level of control over the committee. Yeah, because she's running for president, obviously. Now, less than 6 weeks before the conclusion of their work, Cheney's influence over the committee's final report has rankled many current and former of the committee staff. They are angered and disillusioned by Cheney's push to focus the report primarily on the former president, Donald Trump, because that's all that matters. They have bristled at the committee morphing into what they have come to view as a vehicle for the outgoing lawmaker's political future running for president. 15 former and current staffers who spoke on the condition of an anonymity to discuss internal deliberations expressed concerns that important findings unrelated to Trump will not become available. The feuding brings to the fore a level of public acrimony within the committee that previously had largely played out behind the scenes, as public attention was focused on a series of blockbuster public hearings and, of course, the midterm elections. Yeah, all of this comes out after the fact. Several committee staff members were floored earlier the month when they were told that a draft report would focus almost entirely on Trump, excluding other reams of investigative work. Potentially left on the cutting floor or relegated to an appendix were revelations from the blue team, law enforcement. Yeah, exactly. Look, all of this is being left out. The reports from the blue team, the group that dug into law enforcement and the intelligence community's failure to assess the looming threat and prepare for the well-forecast attack on the Capitol. Obvious. It's either the intelligence community is grossly incompetent for failing to predict and plan for and prevent what we saw at the Capitol, which has only resulted in less than 1,000 criminal charges, okay? Less than 1,000 people caused all of that. So they're either grossly incompetent that they couldn't even manage 1,000 people, or they wanted it to happen and they were complicit in it. It has to be either of the other, one of the two. It's just so embarrassing. Otherwise, why do they need about, I don't know, $1 trillion every year for defense spending budget, CIA, FBI, national defense, DOJ, DHS, all of it for our security to protect, the government and us, allegedly. They couldn't even prepare for it. The proposed report would also cut back on much of the work of the Green Team, which looked at the financing for the January 6th attack. Don't want to see where the money came from. And the Purple Team, which examined the militia groups and the extremists. Only about Trump, because that's all this was all about. Somebody said, we all came from prestigious jobs. We dropped what we were doing so that we could focus on this. We were told that it was going to be an important fact-finding investigation that would inform the public. No, said one former committee staffer. But when the committee became a Cheney 2024 campaign, many of us became discouraged. Other people have issued blistering statements and saying, yeah, Liz Cheney is prioritizing taking out Trump because that's what matters. Trump's the only thing that matters. But that's what we've got from the Washington Post. Liz Cheney is angering even her own committee, and we'll see what their report looks like and what Schiff has to say about it. Of course, we'll continue to cover it. Thank you for liking this video, wherever it is you're watching it, and we'll follow along. We look forward to seeing you on the next one.